The reason why this topic is called When the Soul Leaks: Healing, Integrity, and the Inner Repair is the fact that most of our makeup, call them the four formations: the mind, soul, body, and spirit. The soul is the place where most of our traumas, our experiences, whether it is good or bad, the emotions of our life often is stored. And I'll go a bit more deeper about what that looks like and what that means. But most of us are walking around, if we do not deal with the matters of the soul, end up leaking in our leadership, end up leaking in our lives. And so addressing the matters of the soul is critical to our leadership style. It is critical to our private life. It is critical to the way we show up for others, the way we show up in our communities. And so hence this is very important for us to tackle today. And many of us, I like to say, there's two types of people really when we talk about how we experience emotions or how we deal with emotions. Really, there are obviously variances within that, but the two types that often that I see with people is people who are, when they are going through pain, they tend to observe the pain. They tend to carry the pain within, right? They don't necessarily always express the pain outwardly. They put the pain or try to work it out privately, try to, do very internal reflective work, or they just don't touch it at all. And then you have people who are a bit more outward with the expression of pain, right? They are expressive about what they are feeling at all times. And so it is very stark. You know that person, right, who is always very open about their emotions, very open about what they are feeling, what they are thinking at all times. And so it is important to like distinguish them. And so which one are you? Are you the one that is very expressive in emotions, or you tend to bottle everything in? And so it's important for me to say this. We have all built identities around performance of strength, right? We love to applaud strength in our society. We love to be able to say, you know what, I've got this. I am resilient. I am powerful. I'm able to push through the pain. I'm able to push through when life gets difficult. I would say I'm probably number one on that list. When it comes to that, right? I 100% believe in the power of resilience and pushing through and perseverance. But oftentimes, because of some of those things, because of how hardwired that is, wired into my identity, it became a problem, right, at some point in my life, where I was always, right, relying on that strength to be my default instead of addressing the matters of the soul and the pains of the world. Strength is not a superpower only when it's the only tool that we allow ourselves to default to, right? So strength is, and it is a powerful tool to have in your box. But if it is the main thing that you always default to when life gets difficult or when things are happening to you, it can be detrimental in the long run. And so I want to be able to stress that also it is important to say battle tested is not the same as healed, right? Weary loyalty to being strong is not resilience. Sometimes we tend to be overly, right, loyal to that word strong and strength, and sometimes that loyalty leads us to our detriment. I call it like pseudo loyalty, right, to the same point of I've got this, I don't have to worry about this. And so that false loyalty to strength can be detrimental to who we are, right? There comes a moment where we cannot outwit, outsmart, right, the matters of the soul, the issues that are harming us, or the things that we are experiencing, whether that is fear, rejection, shame, whatever we are going through, or feeling like we are delayed in life, whatever the case is, the things that often our soul tends to store up, right? They tend to store up. And then again, if you are somebody who processes out loud, you are constantly processing to others, if you're a person who likes to hold it all in until that explosion happens, right? It is either way. We can outwit that, right? We can't hold things in forever, because at some point it's going to leak into other parts of our life. This is why we are seeing all these crash outs, right, on social media. People are crashing out, right, and it's almost become celebrated, right, to see people crash out on the internet, and we applaud it, and we are in the comments saying this is amazing, you're representing all of us, right, and it's wonderful to see people have expression. But I think it's easier sometimes to get on the internet, right, and to be able to crash out where there is public admiration, or even people who are can relate, than going back into the places to work on yourself, right? Because having to confront it privately is probably the hardest thing you can do, because that means you have to be held accountable to the healing process, or being able to do it with friends, meaning you have to be held accountable to that process. And so it is important for me to be able to stress that here. And so the next thing that I want to talk about is when our soul requires surgery. Now, it is important to say that many of us, right, are used to putting band aids on things. We are used to covering things up and saying, you know what, I've got it. It's going to be okay. I'm not going to worry about it. I can just put a little band aid on it, and it will fix itself. It will heal itself. Now, depending on the issue, you can put band-aids on life, right? And it will heal itself over time, or it will be okay over time. However, if we do not take the time, most bandages work for small little incisions in our lives, right? Small things that can maybe heal themselves. But the large things, often we can't just go ahead and put a band-aid on top and hope it heals itself, right? Some wounds, right, we minimize because acknowledging them can feel like weakness, right? Coming face to face with that assault, coming face to face with that rejection, coming to face not feeling worthy, or not feeling loved or seen, right? It couldn't be that bad. We often say it can't be that bad, right? It's okay, like it can be that bad possibly for me to have a crash out, right? Which is often, right, one of the most dangerous sentences a leader can say to themselves, especially when they are experiencing such detrimental things that are happening to them, or in their heart, or in their soul, right? And it's important to say that there's a difference between managing your pain, right, and healing from it, right? There are times where life is happening so much that you just have to manage in order to get healed, right? We understand that you can always pause life and say, well, you know what, I will just dedicate this time to addressing the matters of the soul, the things that I am are hurting, or things that are going. We get that. But it is also important to say there is only so long we can manage, right, before it begins to explode or bubble up to the top. So when the soul leaks, band-aids are no longer an option. What is required is far more courageous of us if we are going to go ahead and pursue that. So the things that are required of us, right, are much more courageous if we are to be the individuals who pursue radical healing, radical transformation. And so I see this all the time, right? We wonder why this person that we always knew suddenly looked different, or turned different, or they were acting different, or they had an explosive moment, and we are wondering how is that possible. And the reality is it's very possible, because most people, like I said, there are two types of human beings in the world: people who tend to store up emotions, right? They store up emotions, or people who tend to be more expressive with their emotions, right? We see this a lot with people who end up ending their own lives too, right? Most of the time, people are saying, well, I didn't think they would, I didn't think they had that issue, because they are the individuals who tend to store up emotions within them and not address those emotions. right? And so there are, again, two types of those individuals that we often see in the world, right? And so it is important for me to say, before we even address the wound, we have to be honest about what's actually leaking within us, right? And what it requires us to understand how we are made, right? How do you know something is leaking if you don't know what it is? If you can identify what it is, right? And so it's important to identify what it is before you can actually do something with it, right? Formation is often the shaping of your wisdom, right? What you've learned or what you understand. It is the formation of your identity as a human being, integrity through intentional engagement with your whole self, and also with the self that engages with the world, right? And the people around them. The soul's work is never done. So I want to say this: formation is never finished. You don't get to arrive at formation. You get to heal at different points of formation, right? But life is always happening. And so we always have to come back to the point where we are addressing the things, the matters of the heart, right? And so, the work is fully never done, but it is only deepened, right? So as we mature as people, as we deal with the things, the matters of the heart, we can only get better from there. Formation is the art of being undone and being remade, right? It is the art of being undone. And I want to be very clear. I know there's a lot of self-improvement stuff out there. Formation is not about self-improvement per se, right? Self-improvement is part of formation, right? Like when you work on yourself, when you address the issues, the matters of the soul, the things that are leaking, it is part of your self improvement. But formation is a bit more radical than that, right? Formation is like being able to have, it is like using a destination, right? Self improvement is a form of it. So if I learn to apologize more, right, I have improved as a person. But formation is much more intentional work, consistently doing the same work over time, right? And for many people, right, for the longest time in our human history, you could not talk about working on yourself. And I want to be very clear. The reality is, this generation, for those who get to live in this time, we are more privileged, right, to be able to work on ourselves, to be able to work on the matters of our soul, the things that are disturbing us, the things that are harmed us, the things that we have done to others, the things that we are experiencing. But for the longest time, to say I want to work on myself, to say I want to take time, I want to attend a webinar, I want to enroll in some of, a program like Swali, or go get a therapist. That was abominable, right? To say, oh God, like what's wrong with you? Why aren't you being strong enough, right? Why aren't you being resilient enough? But often resilience does not come right at the beginning of restoration. Resilience often comes really through restoration and at the end of restoration, right? And so most people don't just get to be resilient. You only get to be resilient because you have worked through something and you have identified the resources to be able to work through life and then sustain that for a period of time, right? And so it is important for us to be able to say that we are not just about managing behaviors, right? As somebody who got her degree in public health, one of the areas that I studied was behavioral health and behavioral management things, right? And how our behavior affects our actions in the world. And so it's important for me to say this is not about managing a behavior. This is about reshaping fundamentally how we go about living our lives, how we go about showing up in the world, right? The soul leak does not take place in one place. It often, leaks everywhere at once, right? It doesn't just, okay, you don't just get up and say, well, my God, how did I get to this point? It's often incremental things that lead to explosive moments in our lives. And so I just want to be able to pause here for a minute and asked you what is currently leaking in your soul. And somebody who works with human beings all the time, who is constantly having conversations with people all the time, who's constantly talking to people, coaching people, walking them through their lives. I haven't met one person yet that comes to me or wants to go through this process with our team or with me and says, well, you know what, Grace, I'm good. And often, if they come to me and say, I'm good, halfway through the session, we easily find out that it is not the case, right? Because often most of us are just skirting through life, right? We are all skirting through life, and I've been there, right? And the reason why I wanted to add this piece to Swali's makeup is because the soul, if not, is the, I think, top two important aspect of the human creation that needs to be addressed, of the human being that needs to be addressed. It is where we form our ethics, it is where we form our morals. It is the soul, is what cultivates how we go about thinking, how we go about being, how we go about interacting, right? If I fundamentally don't believe, right, in the goodness of human being in my soul, then I will spend the rest of my life, right, projecting that to humanity. If I do not believe that it is possible to forgive others because I have experienced, right, pain and harm, then that spirit of unforgiveness will permeate through how I show up in the world, right? And so, what is the spirit, right? The spirit is our heart, it is our will, it is the center of our life and choices, right? That's the spirit. It is also your vitality, it is where you get energy, right? I can tell when somebody has really a strong vitality towards life, right? It is, they have the will to want to get up, they have the, the desire to want to make a change, they have the desire to want to live. And you can tell when someone doesn't have the spirit, right? They don't have the vitality. It feels like life has been sucked out of them to some degree, right? When you see them, right? Because their spirit doesn't have that life coming out of it. The mind, right, is the seat of our thinking, feeling, and response to both our inner and outer parts of the world. The soul is the integration of the whole person, interweaving all dimensions of all the four formations, the mind, soul, body, spirit, right? So the soul is really where everything culminates. It's where everything culminates, right? The body is the temple, it is the flesh in which the spirit and the body and the soul and the mind lives in. The body is also the vessel for our inner life, right? The host of every aspect of the human creation. And so you can see why the soul is very important. You can see why it's important to not just ignore the matters of the soul and not just ignore the things that are critical to our being. And so I just want to be able to say this. This is why we can't outwit it. We can't outwit the design, the human design, right? Because it's going to affect one way or the other. If you ignore the matters of the soul, it will affect the way you think. It will affect the way your body shows up. It will affect the way you treat and you take care of your body. And so the next topic that I want to address on this aspect of the soul is what happens when we leave the wounds of the soul untreated, right? Untreated wounds often, for most people, often, especially if you feel like it is a small issue, right? But the untreated wounds often lead, right? If it is left untouched, right? If it is muted enough, right? Most people probably mute the issues of their soul, right? They mute the issues that they are experiencing or going through, right? And this can be also very cultural. If I'm experiencing things or I default to strength is my superpower, when things are happening to me or around me, I can easily default to that issue of letting it just kind of slip under the radar. But we know this, when those things in our life go untreated, it's like a virus. The infection spreads and disrupt what we know to be good, right? What we know to be good, what we know to be healthy. It ripples outward, right? Immobilizing the whole being, the mind, soul, body, and spirit. Like the spirit of anger doesn't just affect you in your home, it's gonna affect you in your leadership. It's gonna affect the way you interact with other human beings. It's gonna affect the way you show up in the world. It leaves us in a place that feels like no return. Often, if the matters of the soul is painful enough, right? It's painful enough. It can feel like there is no return. It can feel like, how am I going to overcome this? And I want to say this is very triggering. So I just want to put that out there. This is why, for some people, their last result is harming themselves or even potentially harming others. Right? And so this is not something we can just say, well, and people think, well, I don't go around harming others. No, you probably don't. And I believe most people probably not necessarily just go and do that. However, we can harm other people, right? Subconsciously. And oh, that wasn't a big deal. Or make sarcastic comments, right? That cuts up other people. So unprocessed pain doesn't stay private. It becomes organizational culture, relational damage, and leadership collapse. So I want to repeat that again. Unprocessed pain does not stay private. It becomes organizational culture, relational damage, and leadership collapse. This is why we see what we are seeing, right? Is because we just leave it long enough, or we think it's not harmful to ourselves, but we make decisions based on that. And so I want us to go here and talk about, now that we've named what is leaking and why, what is leaking for you? We have to talk about the surgery that it actually requires. And let me tell you this, I remember going through this process myself. It's not fun. I always say the matters of the soul, the unprocessed things of the soul, is the things that when nobody is watching us, that we cry most about. That we close the door, right? We close the door and say, I'm just going to cry my eyes out. It's the ache that we feel. Surrender, I want to say this, surrender is not weakness. It is the courage to enter into the process, right? And so it is important for me to say this. The incisions of life require not control, right? We can't control this stuff. And so I just want to say this. Actually, let me go back quickly for 1 second. And to just say this, decisions made from unhealed places produce fractured outcomes. I just want you to take that in. Leaders who have not processed how life is happening to them will often lead from that place of woundedness rather than from wisdom. Just give me a leader and I'll tell you exactly what's happening, right? How they are behaving, how they are making decisions. how they see their colleagues, how they value the human being in their organization, right? The devaluing of another human being. It didn't just come out of nowhere, right? It didn't just come out of nowhere. So it's important to be able to say the people who lead, right, if they have not addressed these issues, can be incredibly detrimental to policy, to raising their children if they choose to do that, to being effective in their relationships, and so forth and so on. For those who are listening, if as things are going through your head, please feel free to put them in the chat. So if you joined us a bit later, we are the setup today is different because I am currently traveling, and the rest of our webinars will be in this setup as well. Okay. So I want to say this: surrender is not weakness, right? It's the process and the courage to enter into the process. The decisions of life does not require control, but surrender. The more you try to control it, the more you are going to leak. I've got this, 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 right? I've got this. I don't need this. I don't need to address this. Grace, it's fine. It's fine. The more you try to hold control, the more the long-term effects are. Surrender is a willingness to enter into a process that must break before it can be built. Right? This is why I love to use the house analogy, right? You can patch up the home, and this important, like if the house is in great condition, then being able to patch it up, it should be fine. But if fundamentally there are things within the house that are in detriment, or there is mold within the house, and you don't address the mold within the house, it will cause the long-term effects of sickness, disease in your life. So for leaders, right, for all of us, we struggle with the issue of control. Let's be clear, right? Tell me you don't, and I could probably prove you wrong, right? We all struggle with it. We have an area of our lives that we like to hold tightly to our chest, right? For leaders, surrender is the most countercultural thing that you can do, right? Because everything is about power. The more power you have, the less you are likely to surrender that power. But to surrender is very counterculture, right? To surrender to the process of restoration, to surrender to the process of saying, I need some help, right? That is counterculture. We cannot heal what we refuse to feel. Surrender is not the absence of strength. It is strength directed towards inward for the first time, right? It is when strength is actually from the outside, because strength is often seen on the outskirts of our lives, right? But strength is really when you are able to do the things that are most difficult, the things that are closest to your heart, I like to say. And so I want us to go to this next slide. And before I even talk about the rewiring and the process of that, in trying to rewire our soul, I just want to say the goal is not to be the same. The goal of formation is not to come out feeling like, oh, I'm the same person, I'm still intact. If somebody goes through a radical process of transformation and renewal, they never come out the same. You shouldn't come out the same. You guys should not leave this webinar with not a thought or a commitment to an action, right? You should leave this webinars feeling like I have some ideas of things to deal with. I have something to think about. I have something to ruminate on. I have something to be held accountable for. When people come out of anything like these kind of webinars that are very deeply entrenched in a lot of transformational work, and you come out saying to me, Grace, you know what? It was, I didn't take anything away from it. It also tells me about your heart disposition, right? So sameness is not the goal. Formation 100% guarantees, right? Transformation, not comfort. Being uncomfortable is one of the most powerful things that you can learn about life. To be able to sit in the discomfort, to be able to sit in the not yet, to be able to sit, I don't have the answers yet, to be able to sit that there's something wrong. That discomfort is absolutely necessary, right? It is also clearing the space, right, for what is eternal and healing and freeing. Our restoration is not just for this earth, right? As Swali, we believe that we are made for an eternal life. Like we don't just die and not go anywhere. For us, I believe it's heaven, right? For those who are in the process of salvation, like we, right? We have to be held accountable for our lives that we live now. And so it's not just about what I do on this earth. We've all been put on earth to do something, to become better, to go through the process of transformation. And if you do not live your life in that process, right, it's going to cost you not just what is temporal, but what is eternal. Because we all have to meet our maker, right? And there are three things that formation would demand of you: honesty, what is actually broken and why is it broken. Number two, patience with a process that cannot be accelerated or managed. You can't just quicken it up. Let's just hurry up, Grace. Let's get it done. No, 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 no. It's a process and it's a journey, and it's going to require your patience. Number three, trust that what is being built and the breaking is worth the cost. It is absolutely worth the cost. So the guarantee of formation is not that you will return to who you used to be, but is that who you will become will be capable of carrying what you are meant to do in the world. Meaning the gravity of your life, you will be able to carry that because you went through the process of formation. You went through the process of addressing the leakages in your soul, right? This is why you see people on the mountaintop, and then when life happens, they crash out, right? Because they never took the time to build the skill set to address when things happens in life. Now we are all humans. So it's less about having to have it perfectly, right? And even if you fall on the mountaintop, just know that you can always figure it out again. Just know there is room for your restoration. Like I said this already, it's not guaranteed they're going to come back who you are, but you are going to come back a more transformed individual. And I want to say this: transformation is a doorway, not a locked room. Some transformations, some formations can bring some wounds to a permanent close, meaning I'm done with this issue. I feel like I have defeated this issue. I am no longer attached to this drug. I'm no longer attached to this obsession of human approval. I'm no longer attached to these things any longer. I feel the freedom from it. It doesn't have a hold on me, right? It can bring things to a permanent close. There are things that I have struggled with, right, in the past. For me, it was a big part of it was unforgiveness, right? On unforgiveness. And I feel like, yes, even though I have a much more the capacity now to forgive quickly and to open up my heart to forgiveness, even though there's parts of it that is, I would say, I have complete uh authority over, but there are still moments, right, where I have to go back to the things that I've had to relearn, right, when I get wounded or harmed, right, by life. And yet to remain is to admit that life's reality may open up old wounds. You may think I have this forgiveness things down packed, and then something happens that can feel like you are being derailed, right? Something happens that can feel like you are being derailed. Formation is not a one-time event. It is a doorway that we may re-enter whenever restoration is needed. This is why in Swali we have our model that we've created, allows you to go through the process of formation. But then when you graduate out of that process, there is a re-entry point. You may not have to re-enter the whole process, but maybe you may have to re-enter parts of the process, right? To address the issue that you may be facing. The goal is not to become somebody who never bleeds on others or who doesn't go through pain. It is somebody, the goal is, however, is somebody who knows how to go through the process of healing. Now this person knows the how, right? I know the how to deal with something. The point is not to say, oh God, I'm never gonna get wounded again. This is not some utopic idea. It is to say that things will happen again. And some of those things may come again, may creep up again in your life. But at least now you know the process because you've gone through it before. And so it is to say wholeness is not the absence of wounds. It is the presence, right, of practiced willingness to return to the doorway of formation again and again and again. I just think it is important that people that are in my life deserve a healed human being. I don't want to be the cause of somebody's generational wounds. I think they deserve, right? Of course, I deserve that process, but more importantly, I don't want to cause that. I don't want to let that pain hurt my loved ones, right? Or even strangers that I do not know. I think they deserve the healed individual. And so it is to say that we cannot love others from a leaking soul. The leak will also reach them. Right? Because at some point that stain doesn't just stay on you. It's gonna stain others as well. Especially if you are in close proximal relationships with other human beings. It's gonna stain. We must be radical in the way we resist our patterns. Resistance to our old patterns is an act of love. Right? We think the act of love sometimes is all this beautiful, fluffy thing, but resistance to our patterns, our toxic patterns, resistance to our inability to not want to address issues, resistance to the things that we are comfortable sometimes in that cause harm to ourselves and to others, is an act of love. Formation is not just about self focus. I know we live in a society that is all intrinsic sometimes, but it is the prerequisite for every relationship, every decision, and every act of leadership, right? It is the prerequisite. It's not the aftermath of a relationship, it is the prerequisite for every decision you make. That's why formation is so critical. It is to receive love that is unadulterated and pure. We must first create the internal place to hold it. I see this all the time, whether it is pastors, whether it is leaders that we know from afar, whether it is friends. The reality is, I see it. I've seen it off the pulpit. Wounded pastors, wounded leaders, wounded mothers, wounded fathers, wounded friends, right? Who make decisions out of that woundedness, or they speak out of it, or their theology is crowded by their wound, or their decision making in the organization is crowded by those very things. If you want to lead well, do the uncomfortable thing, do the hard thing, do the thing, right? That's going to allow you not just flourish, but for everything around you to flourish as well. That is the most radical form of love, right? Apart from the agape love, which is God's love, which is the most unadulterated form of love because God's love is pure. But for us human beings, our love, if it is not addressed, often is crowded with lots of things because we are experiencing life. We are going through life. So the most loving thing a leader can do for its people is that they serve, is for them to be able to work on themselves first. So please, for future leaders out there, for the sake of your generation, for the sake of those who will be led by you, don't let your soul leak without you addressing it. Don't become the leader who just absorbs everything and never does the work to release the very thing that you are absorbing. And for our current leaders, you don't have to publicize that you are working on yourself, but you can take a step back. You can do a step. You can integrate this as part of your leadership. So what does it mean to be recovering and practicing leader? A recovering patient is often someone, right, who has failed. They are someone who have chosen to be honest. It's not somebody who's like, well, you know what? I have failed. No, a recovering patient is somebody who's acknowledged that I went through this, but now I have chosen honesty. Now I have chosen integrity. Now I have chosen the path. It may be the long path, but it's the worthy path. A champion patient, a champion individual who's gone through the formation is somebody who keeps returning back to the work, even when it's hard. People, we can do hard things. We can do the difficult thing. And sometimes the difficult thing is sitting and let your mind be still so that you can hear what's happening here. I know we are in a hustle culture. I know we are in a hustle society where everything is hustle, hustle, hustle. But we know this with the signs. Noise in our society can cause a lot of harm. Not just like the noise of people or things, no, the literally the physical noise of cars and movement and sound, right? When we don't allow ourselves to separate from the noise, it can drown out the still and quiet voice, not just of God, but also of the things that you need to hear so that you can work on it. The things that are talking negative into your spirit, the negative self talk, the things that you are saying to yourself or that you've said to others, right? You can't know what is happening until you still this mind, you still the mind. Leadership formation is a lifelong practice, not credentials, not a season, not a phase. You phase out of seasons, but the formation is a long-term thing, right? What a recovering leader carries, right, is somebody, right, who has a strong awareness. I always say this: self-awareness can't be fully taught. You cultivate self-awareness through formation process. How do I know how to be, not just to myself, but to others? How do I become the change maker in the world? Self-awareness doesn't just come about. It is by going through those processes in order for you to know what is happening, not just with yourself, but with others. Emotional intelligence is not just learned, it's by going through hard things. I know suffering, that word, many of us want to escape it. But the most robust human flourishing individuals I have met are people who've gone through some really hard things and they've allowed themselves to go through them and to be restored through those processes. Compassion is forged in the experience, right? Compassion is formed through the experience. Integrity is rebuilt from the inside out, not performed for the audience, right? People can clap for you all day long. How amazing is this person? But then you go home and you shut the door and you're crashing, right? It's important to receive the applause, don't get me wrong. There's a place to be celebrated. But until you do the work that is the most difficult, that celebration will not sustain you. The most credible leaders are those who have never not experienced brokenness. The most credible leaders are people who have stories of woundedness, are people who have stories of suffering of some sort, right? The people that we most identify with in life are people that we know have gone through something. It's not to say everybody has to go through something crazy. No, 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 that's not what I'm saying. It doesn't have to be these extreme things in life, but it's to say you have experienced some things in life, whether that is small or macro, whatever it is, that has shaped who you are. And so it is important for me to say that formation produces from leading from wounds to leading from wisdom, from managing others' perceptions to anchoring authentic identity, from outsmarting others to trusting the process of our own becoming and the process of others becoming. So this is what we see. From performing from strength to practicing wholeness. Right? So just take a pause on this. This is what we should see from leaders. You don't let the wound be, right? You lead from the restoration process. You lead from knowledge, right? Knowledge is what you have. Wisdom is how you use that knowledge, how you overcame that process. You can have all the knowledge in the world and still not have wisdom. You can spend your life managing other people's perception, or you can walk in a life that is full with being authentic, but not just authentic to be authentic sake, but really in a way that it allows people to see what is real or what is true about who you are. So formation does not heal the person. It fundamentally changes the quality of everything that they are building and rebuilding, and how they lead and how they love. So addressing the matters, the leakages in the soul, that is not just like something that you get up and you're like, oh my God, look, yeah, no, no, no. It fundamentally changes everything. Everything that you touch, everything that you allow to yourself to engage with, how you love others, how you receive God's love, how you in turn love others, how you are able to demonstrate that, how you lead, how you are a father, a mother, a friend. It fundamentally rewires you and changes everything that you are. So, my question to us as we are getting ready to close here is, what part of you is being reshaped? You were not designed to carry what is broken indefinitely. The soul that leaks is not a soul that has failed, but it is a soul that is ready. The doorway of formation is open. Are you ready to walk through that door? Are you ready to do the things that are difficult? And this is the work that most of our organizational leaders, this is the hard work part. It's easy to be charismatic. It's easy to go out there and showcase your talent. This is the work that is the most difficult. The soul, the matters of the soul that we defined earlier in the beginning of this webinar. The soul is the place, if not, I think the number one fundamental place of the human being where everything is stored, both good and bad. This is why the soul is integrated into every aspect of our formation: mind, body, and spirit. You can't just outwit it. I don't care how smart you are. It's going to leak if you don't address the things that matter. No human being on this earth is born without things that they have to address. All of us are fundamentally flawed in one way or the other. Just give them some time to live a little bit long enough, and you see it. Even as a child, 2 years old, 4 years old, I see it with my nephew and nieces all the time. It's like, how did you become so naughty? How did you become so naughty, right? And so those things, right, is important. I see even with little kids, learn behaviors, things that they come out being. And you question, how can you be 2 years old and so naughty all at the same time? Because we are not just born flawless people. We are born with some disordered things, and that we have to address them. things are learned also. This is why formation is important. It is good to receive love that is unadulterated and pure. It is good to give that love to others in the same vein. You cannot give what leakages has taken. Formation is how you get it back. It is how you get it back. The work of formation is the most important leadership development work that you will ever undertake, because it develops the leader before it develops the skills. And so, like I always say, the skills are only a byproduct of what you are. The skills are given, right? They are given. Sometimes, if you practice hard enough, you can do something. Yeah, you learn how to do it. But formation, you can practice it and just get away with it. No, you have to sit with it. You have to address it. And so, everyone who will watch this later, who've joined us, I know today was a hard one. I said today was probably the most extensive and hard hitting and Dewey is in the chat. If there are any questions, I will take them. If not, this brings, I'm actually happy that we actually ended on time. We are 3 minutes over. And so, for those who joined us, I want to thank you. I know most of you guys, based on the metrics that we are seeing, you watch this after it launches and after it goes live. And so, for those who come and watch this a bit later, thank you for doing that. And thank you for sharing on it. And for those who have joined us, we would love for you to write something on LinkedIn about your experience and what you are learning, and tag Swali, tag myself on LinkedIn, because we want to hear what you are learning. We will also send out a survey for you to be able to have access to. So everyone, thank you so much. Next week we have two more left, two more, very critical. We are gonna have Dr. Janelle Goodwill who's be speaking next week, and she is profound, and so she is going to be doing that. Ted Chen is also another powerhouse, and he's going to close us off as the final guest. And so you want to not miss this one. You want to not miss those two. And so I hope you guys have received what you needed to receive today. I know it was a lot, but we love you. But I always say, more importantly, God loves you. He sees you. He knows you. And stop running away. Be still and know that it's going to be okay. You've got this, and we've got your back. Delight in the process, delight in the journey, and know that every step counts, whether it is minor or large, it all counts. And so, for everyone, we thank you very much. Have a wonderful rest of your weekend, and we will see you next week. Cheers, everyone. Bye bye.